unrest in our society which forces people to take law in their own hands and deliver instant injustice, not justice, but deliver instant injustice. Do we then need to dehyphenate cases of murder with cases of lynching? Is that the need of the hour? That is going to be our big issue of discussion on India Ahead at 9. Now, despite the Supreme Court asking the states and the centre to crack down on the repeated cases of mob lynching, yet another case has now been reported. The victim was only 15 years old and was beaten to death because he allegedly stole a mobile phone.
Another incident of mob lynching has surfaced, this time from the Karur district of Tamil Nadu, where a young 15-year-old boy was lynched to death by a group of people on the suspicion that he had stolen a mobile phone and 3,000 rupees in cash from some villagers.
So there are a couple of things. One, the Honourable Court is given 2 weeks' time for the absolute compliance of his judgment to happen. It's also asked the states that have not filed a reply, which are 9 states in total, 1 week to file its report and its reply to its judgment. And it asked us, that is the petitioners, to write to the states. We submitted a list of 54 victims of mob lynching to the Honourable Supreme Court. It's asked us to write to the states so that a uniform policy can be formed with regards to victims of mob lynching.
The young boy, Bala Subramani, had a history of being involved in small thefts and petty crimes for the last 6 months. After the death of his father a year ago, he dropped out of school and became addicted to liquor. On Sunday, his mother saw an angry mob approaching their home demanding the whereabouts of Bala Subramani. Petrified, she fled the house. When she returned, she found her son dead with multiple injury marks on his body. Today, the Supreme Court of India pulled up the Delhi government and 8 other states who still haven't filed compliance reports on implementing guidelines regarding mob lynching. The court also directed that compensation be provided to all victims of lynching. The centre and the states have also been asked to publicly broadcast within a week how mob violence of any kind will invite serious consequences under the law.
No, like in Masuka, we've said minimum, if somebody has died, there must be a minimum compensation of 25 lakhs to be decided by states, but nothing less than 25 lakhs. So we're going to write to them, because unless you don't have a uniform policy, if somebody gives you 50,000 or 1 lakh, say if somebody is lynched in Delhi or Mumbai, what is 50,000 or 1 lakh going to do to the family? So you must have a uniform policy. It must not just be compensation which is material, but monetary, but also compensation to rehabilitate them, resettle them, some sort of counselling. There must be a comprehensive policy with regards to them.
Thank you so much for joining us, Tehseen. That was Petitioner Tehseen Poonawala telling us exactly what he feels regarding the compensation and the lackluster attitude of the government, including the central government at this point, regarding cases of mob lynching. This is Neelashish Chaudhary with camera person Nikhil Rastogi for India Ahead.
So let's do a complete 360 on this story, on this video wall presentation right behind us. Mob lynching in Tamil Nadu. What has happened today? Let us first highlight that. A 15-year-old boy was lynched to death in Karur district in Tamil Nadu. His name was Bala Subramani, was suspected of having stolen 3,000 rupees and a mobile phone. That was the provocation. And this is not an isolated incident. There are many such cases that happen. In this case, the victim was tied to a pillar, thrashed with sticks, and then beaten to death. The mob wanted Bala Subramani to confess to the crime. And when he did not initially, then they decided to take law in their own hands. Now we feel that lynching has become a new normal in this country. One case is one too many, but there are 68 incidents of lynching reported in the last 3 years. And I feel this is criminal. This is absolutely criminal. Almost one incident is being reported per day if you take the larger picture, not only the big cases. More than 75 victims exist across India, which we have in fact been highlighting on this show. Now, let's first quickly take a look at what the Supreme Court has had to say on mob lynching. The Supreme Court had pulled up states on increasing incidents of mob violence. We know this has been the stated position. The Supreme Court said, and I quote, "No citizen can take law into his hands nor become law unto himself, unquote. This is the Supreme Court's observation to the states, where the onus is entirely on the states. The Supreme Court also says, and I quote, a stringent law will instill a sense of fear among the wrongdoers. So Ministry of Home Affairs actually had in fact even issued advisory to states on mob violence, but clearly that has not helped, because this is a far complex issue and very, very difficult, it seems, for the state law and order machinery to deal with, perhaps because of some dabbling or some politics that gets intertwined. Now, what is the solution? Is a new law the solution? Well, there are arguments for and then argument against. The argument for is that lynching as a mob activity will find a clear definition under the law. As of now, it is registered as a case of murder. With increasing incidents, a separate law will deliver justice swiftly, so believe all the advocates of a separate law. And point number 3, lynching will be treated as a penal offense under the Indian Penal Code. So these are the 3 broad arguments that people have made in favor of having a new law, which Tehseen Poonawalla calls Masuka. Now, what are the arguments against the new law? This is also significant. They say the existing laws against murder and unlawful assembly are adequate. The problem really is their implementation on the ground. So the new law, even if it comes into existence, will suffer the same problem if it is not implemented properly. A separate law, they say, against rape has failed to act as a deterrent. But is this the reason why a new law should not exist? Well, that is something which is going to be put up for discussion. Before I proceed to all my guests this evening, I want to introduce Karur Ghulam. He's an activist, joins us from Chennai. Karur, good evening. How do you see this incident, the latest incident of mob lynching in Karur?
I mean, first of all, whoever takes the law into their own hands is not acceptable. This is a democratic country and we have certain rules and regulations which everyone will have to follow, whether it is a member of parliament or member of legislative assembly or a common man for that matter, will have to, is not allowed to take the law into their own hands. And these things are happening of late, after Madam Jayalalitha's death, especially in Tamil Nadu, we see a lot of these things happening. It is because there is no one to control the people of the state, neither is anyone controlling the lawmakers of the state. Now, 2 weeks back we saw H. Raja of BJP accusing the court, in front of the media, in front of the police, and until now no action has been taken on him. So what sort of respect do you think people of Karur or people of anyone of this nation will have on the court? So when such incidents happen, even if H. Raja, the secretary of the National Party, does, he still has to be punished. Only when these actions take place, the common man will also have a respect towards the law. Otherwise, such things will continue to happen, because when the court shows so much of mercy for one side of the people, and you can expect these things to happen.
As you mentioned, Tamil Nadu has seen several incidents of mob lynching of late. What could be the reason of these growing incidents?
Well, the word freedom has not been taken correctly by the people of the state, I would say. Many places where the people are straight away getting into action, we have police, we have court, the honorable court. So these matters should be left to them. Of course, when the public feel that there's something going wrong, the first thing they'll have to do is inform the nearby police station. See, now it is not like olden days where we don't have enough police stations, or police stations are too far. That is not the case these days. We have a lot of police booths available, police stations available. So the first thing that everyone will have to do is inform the nearby police station, and then it is up to them. The public will also have to cooperate, and at the same time, when the police receives any complaint from the public, they will have to act immediately on that. Now, these things are also happening, as we see in Tamil movies. That is what is happening these days. The police are not taking action immediately. These complaints are also there, where if anyone approaches the police station or gives a complaint over the phone, the police are not taking action immediately. So they are taking their own time, and meanwhile the culprit gets escaped very easily. So maybe these are the reasons why the the people are taking the law into their own hands.
All right, Ghulam, and pardon my, pardon for incorrectly pronouncing your name, Ghulam. Now, a recent hearing by Supreme Court on mob lynching was taken up that had even urged the Parliament to enact a law on the same. What type of law can be put in place to deal with such situations?
Well, a strict law has to be passed. Anyone who involves in such kind of activities will needs to be given a very severe punishment, and maybe if few are being given a severe punishment, then people will not involve in such kind of activities. So again, a court can come up with any decision, but the people who would execute the decision on the field is the policemen. So they will have to be as serious as the Supreme Court. So it is not just the Supreme Court who come up and give some decision, but that has to be carried out equally effectively in on the field. That needs to be taken care by the local state government. And as you know, after again I would specify this point again. After Madam Jayalalitha's death, the law and order situation itself is not so good in our state, in Tamil Nadu. So we are having to face so many problems. Problems are coming from political end, and now these sort of problems, we saw many rape cases recently, and I was also taken an interview for that as well. So these kind of things are happening very frequently in the last 2 years. So a strong punishment has to be given to these people so that nobody does this in future.
All right, Ghulam, many thanks for joining us on this broadcast. Let me now quickly introduce our guest tonight, Niharika Karanjawala, advocate in the Supreme Court, right with me here in the Delhi studio. Arjun Neely joins us from Hyderabad. He's an advocate. In just a short moment, we'll also have Vaikunt Kasturi Rangan, an activist, joining us from Chennai, and Sitarama Rao, former additional DGP of the Andhra Pradesh Police. Niharika, I'm going to begin with you. A separate law. Where do you stand as far as a separate law is concerned? Don't you think it is important to define mob lynching, considering that this has become a menace?
Yes, I completely agree with that. And another thing that I think it will do is, because there is merit on both sides of this, in point of fact, legally speaking, yes, the law on murder and unlawful assembly does address mob lynching, but if it's made a section unto itself and an offence unto itself, one of the things that will also help is that the Supreme Court has recently told states to go out and reinforce the consequences of mob lynchings, and I think if it is an offence unto itself, in people's minds also, people will realize that if you go and partake in this mob, even if you aren't the person that has struck some killing blow to an individual, you are responsible and you are liable to the same extent as every other member of that mob. And that's why I think a new law and a properly implemented one will really go a significant way towards reinforcing in people's minds that this is not something they want to be a part of and they want to be doing.
Okay, but what about the arguments that say that our existing laws are enough? It's just that they're not implemented properly.
But, the existing law, yes, technically that is a problem, but there is no harm in having mob lynching defined and made a specific offence unto itself. There's certainly no harm in that. And where I also saw the other point where the new law on rape hasn't led to the changes that one might hope for in reduction of incidences, but two things on that. One, you can't expect these things to suddenly happen magically, because I feel even those laws are not currently being properly implemented at a ground level. Two, 5 years in the life of a legislation is not that long, actually. So if you want to bring out a larger change in society, you need to give it a bit more time. But I personally am for the enacting of a separate law on mob lynching.
So we can discuss the modalities as to what goes into that law and all. That can be a subject matter of debate, but you feel that it must exist to start with. Okay. Let me see if we have Mr. Arjun Neely with us. Mr. Neely, can you hear me? If you can hear me, where do you stand on a separate law?
See, I am not against it. It may be welcome, but I am very skeptical whether that will improve the situation on the ground. Because the existing penal provisions itself, or even the what the Supreme Court has given guidelines, specific guidelines about appointing a nodal officer at the SP level to curb these things and to conduct a day-to-day hearing of the cases, all these have been given a go by. No one is implementing it, despite all these things. So this is resulting in an emboldenment of these sections, which are clearly taking law onto their own